Sealed. No radio. No contact with the surface. No way to know if the world above was still there. Depth charges exploding outside the hull. The crew had been underwater for days. No sleep. Carbon dioxide rising. Temperature inside the submarine, over 50 degrees Celsius. And 3 men were about to end the world. They didn't know they were doing it. They thought the war had already started. Welcome to History AI. We don't talk about history, we decode it. We talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis like it was a chess match. Kennedy and Khrushchev, 2 men in 2 rooms. 13 days of careful, rational decision-making. That is not what happened. What actually happened was this. The closest moment to nuclear war in human history did not occur in a war room. It occurred in a metal tube, submerged, isolated from every signal, every order, every piece of information about what was actually happening above. The men with their fingers on the trigger didn't know the trigger was loaded, and the system that was supposed to prevent catastrophe had accidentally placed the decision in the hands of 3 exhausted men who hadn't slept in 4 days. October 27, 1962, the most dangerous day of the 20th century. Somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, northeast of Cuba, Soviet submarine B-59, Foxtrot class, running silent, running deep. The submarine had been underwater for days, cut off from all communication with Moscow. The crew had no idea what was happening on the surface. They had received no orders, no updates, no information. What they had was this: depth charges. American destroyers had located B-59 and were dropping practice depth charges, signaling charges meant to force the submarine to surface and identify itself. The crew of B-59 didn't know they were practice charges. To the men inside that hull, in the heat, in the silence, with carbon dioxide slowly thickening the air they were breathing, it felt exactly like war. The political officer, Ivan Maslenikov, had reached his conclusion. The war had started. Moscow had been destroyed. They had nothing left to wait for. He wanted to launch. The captain, Valentin Savitsky, agreed. B-59 was carrying a T-5 nuclear torpedo. Yield, approximately 10 kilotons. Enough to destroy an entire naval fleet. Enough to guarantee a response. Enough to start what could not be stopped. Under Soviet naval protocol, launching required the agreement of 3 officers. Savitsky, yes. Maslenikov, yes. The 3rd officer was a man named Vasily Alexandrovich Arkhipov. He said no. To understand what that no meant, you have to understand what the yes would have triggered. A Soviet nuclear torpedo detonates in the Atlantic. American naval vessels destroyed. Washington receives the report. Not a drill, not a warning. A confirmed nuclear strike. The American Nuclear Response Protocol activates automatically. Not a decision, a procedure. Soviet early warning systems detect American launch signatures. Moscow activates its own response protocol. Every alliance, every preloaded military procedure, every hair trigger system that both superpowers had spent 15 years constructing, fires. Not because anyone decided to end the world, because the system was designed to respond faster than any human being could think. The Cuban Missile Crisis wasn't 13 days of careful diplomacy narrowly preventing disaster. It was a pressure system, already at critical threshold, already straining at every connection point. And on October 27, 1962, the only thing standing between the pressure and its release was one man in a sealed metal tube who hadn't slept in 4 days. This is where the lens shifts completely. When AI models the full decision architecture of the Cuban Missile Crisis, every command node, every protocol, every chain of authorization, it produces something deeply unsettling. Not a risk assessment, a map of every point in the system where a decision could be made. every node where human judgment could intervene, every place where the chain could be broken. And what the map shows is this. On October 27, 1962, almost every decision node was pointing in the same direction. Kennedy's advisors were split, but the military pressure was toward escalation. Khrushchev was under pressure from hardliners in Moscow. American destroyers were actively hunting Soviet submarines. Cuban anti-aircraft batteries had already shot down a U-2 spy plane that same day. The system was not balanced. The system was leaning. And deep inside that system, in a place no strategic planner had fully modeled, was submarine B-59. Here is what the AI map reveals. B-59 was not supposed to be a decision node. It was a weapon, a delivery system, a tool inside a larger structure. The assumption built into every Soviet naval protocol was that submarines would receive orders from Moscow before acting. But B-59 had lost contact with Moscow, which meant the protocol had created an accidental override. 3 men, unreachable by any command authority on Earth, held the ability to initiate a nuclear strike without authorization, without orders, without any information about what was actually happening above them. The system had not planned for this node. AI identifies it immediately, a single point in the entire architecture where the human veto had not been removed. Savitsky, yes. Maslenikov, yes. 1 node remaining. Vasily Arkhipov. The AI model cannot explain why he said no. It can identify that he was the only node capable of saying it. It can trace exactly what his yes would have triggered. It can calculate, with precision, the probability that any other officer in his position exhausted, isolated, convinced the war had started, would have agreed. That probability is not 0. It is not low. What it cannot do is explain the interior of that moment. The heat, the silence between the depth charges, the faces of the crew, the weight of a decision that had no correct answer, only consequences. That is where AI reaches its limit. It can map the node. It cannot inhabit it. There is someone else in the story. Her name was Olga Arkhipova. While her husband sat in a sealed submarine in the Atlantic Ocean, holding the fate of the world in a decision nobody had asked him to make, she was at home, waiting, not knowing where he was, not knowing what was happening, not knowing that the Cuban Missile Crisis was, at that exact moment, 1 word away from becoming something no one could name afterward. She had been a naval wife long enough to understand the silence, long enough to have learned not to ask the questions that had no answers. She waited. History did not record what those days felt like for her. History did not ask. But the system that saved the world required Vasily Arkhipov to be on that submarine. And it required someone to carry everything he couldn't carry from inside a sealed metal tube at the bottom of the Atlantic. Olga Arkhipova held the world too. The world never knew her name. Here is the full weight. Arkhipov said no. B-59 surfaced, was identified by American destroyers, returned to the Soviet Union. The Cuban Missile Crisis de-escalated over the following days. Kennedy and Khrushchev reached their agreement. The missiles were removed. The world exhaled without knowing it had stopped breathing. Vasily Arkhipov was not celebrated. He received no medal for what he did on October 27, 1962. For decades, the incident was classified. The world did not learn what had almost happened, what one man's refusal had prevented until decades later. When the story finally emerged, a former American defense secretary said this: "We came this close." He held up his thumb and forefinger, a centimeter of air between them. 1 word, in 1 room, at the bottom of the ocean. That is the distance between the world that exists and the world that didn't. Here is what this means. The Cuban Missile Crisis is remembered as a triumph of diplomacy. 2 rational leaders stepping back from the edge. That story is not wrong. It is incomplete. Because while Kennedy and Khrushchev were negotiating above, the system had already created a situation neither of them controlled. A nuclear weapon, 3 exhausted men. No communication, no orders, no information, and a protocol that had accidentally placed the final decision in a room no one was watching. This is what systems do. They are designed with intention. They are built with logic. They are stress-tested against the scenarios their designers can imagine. And then reality produces a scenario nobody imagined. A submarine that loses contact. A crew that believes the war has started. A decision node that wasn't supposed to exist. The most dangerous moment in any system is not when it breaks. It is when it produces an outcome its designers never modeled. When the assumptions built into the architecture turn out to be wrong, and the gap between what the system expected and what actually happened is filled by one person, in one moment, making one decision that nobody planned to give them. Arkhipov wasn't a hero in the traditional sense. He wasn't brave in the way war movies show bravery. He was tired, he was hot, he was cut off from everything, and in that moment he simply refused to be certain about something he couldn't know for sure. That refusal, that single, quiet, unremarkable no, is the reason you are hearing this. Right now, there are systems running that no single person fully sees. Financial systems, AI decision chains, military protocols, infrastructure networks, all of them built with intention, all of them stress-tested against the scenarios their designers imagined. None of them stress-tested against the scenario nobody thought of. The question is not whether those systems contain an unmodeled node. They do. The question is, when that node activates, who will be standing there? And will they be the kind of person who says no? And in the next episode, a building, a normal morning, a decision made in seconds by someone with no authority to make it. The consequences lasted decades, and the man who made it spent the rest of his life wishing he hadn't.